Intermodal Depot in downtown Royal Oak. And let's see, Rosie Ziegel. We see Mr. and Mrs. Whitehouse. And we're working on some other people here. Penny Tram walking away, Howard Ziegel over there. All kinds of people gathered for this presentation we're going to have. The Ganders there. Kenneth Homburg. Dave Roberts over there. Got Mr. Williams over there. Mr. Paul Adams standing right there. And he brought you. Here, where do you stand? Underneath the banner. Reflections. Got Mr. Adams' picture. And we have Howard Ziegel. And we got Kenny in the shadows over here. And Mr. Whitehouse just finished up his Detroit City Railway horse car. All presented here in Detroit. This thing is perfect in every detail. Smile for the people, Mr. Tram. Trying to get this in the best angle where I don't get reflection. But it is a picture of the Shoemaker Administration Building for the DSR. It was done by Paul Adams.
1947. But to begin the program, I'd like to introduce Dan Dirks, our General Manager of SMART, who will give us a little background on the program and introduce our award recipients.
We started the Champions of Transit Award 3 years ago. And the whole purpose was to acknowledge people that have made public transportation succeed in southeastern Michigan, and it has. To help people that have helped SMART, either directly or indirectly. In past years, we've awarded, for example, Myers Thrifty Acres, who have opened their parking lots so that we can have park and ride locations. And we've honored Oakland Mall, who've gone out of their way. And we've honored different individuals for their contributions. This year, we wanted to acknowledge advocates, people that have been with us for a long time, some folks who are not necessarily long advocates, but have done some special things for us. The first award winner that we have is one of those that have been with SMART, been an advocate for us for a long time, Norma Reganon. Norma, actually, it's been a long time, it was a long time bus ride. She took the 12-mile bus, was it 12 miles? 10 mile bus. She lives here in Royal Oak and was a teacher, elementary school teacher, right? Middle school, I'm sorry. And every day for years, Norma took the bus to go back and forth to school, and Norma was one of the organizers of the Supporters of Regional Transit, SORT. And so this award is for Norma, as well as all of the folks from SORT who have been around for 10, 15 years and have been longtime advocates for SMART, for VDOT, and for regional public transportation. One of the other reasons that this is a special award for us at SMART and giving it to Norma is since she's retired, she hasn't just sat around. She's very active in her community, in particular with the homeless. And the churches that she works with and the programs she works helps folks who don't have a home. not only find a home, but get training to get jobs to become productive folks in society. And it's for this reason that we acknowledge Norma and her contributions and thank her for all the years of support at SMART, and we would like to award her. Thank you. Come on. And the cameras are over here. So we have to
started in 1992, and we have Leonard Berry with us, who also was with us since 1992. And Leonard, in fact, biked here. He is just a very, very healthy person, and I think maybe it's also because he uses the bus and he has to walk to the bus stop, and this makes you an extremely healthy person. And as I said, too, about riding a bus, you meet all kinds of people, and that's what we all need to do. We need to meet all kinds of people so that we can get to know each other and we respect each other because we know each other and we're not afraid of each other and we don't need to pay any attention to any stereotypes. And in fact, I met a lot of wonderful people when I rode the bus. And one day I was sitting next to an African-American lady, and I lived in primarily a suburban white neighborhood. And I sneezed, and she said, "God bless you." And I said, "Thank you so much." And we started to talk, and it was wonderful. And we got to know each other. And that's what we all absolutely need to know and do. And also, I did take the bus when I taught school for 7 years. I was never late for my classroom, except one day the SMART bus, and occasionally this happens, broke down. And so I went to the driver because I was petrified. My classroom was going to have no teacher when the bell rang. And you know what that is, especially in middle school. So I spoke to the driver still there. So he called SMART on his phone, and he asked someone at SMART to call the secretary at my school, and the secretary and someone in my classroom, so that when I got there, everything was taken care of. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience for me, and I thank you so much.
Before I announce the second winner, I do want to acknowledge a person that couldn't be here. Actually, he's an old friend of SMART's. We have one of the oldest advisory committees of older adults and people with disabilities in the country. It's well over 30 years. For about 20 years, 15, 20 years, he was actually the chairperson of that committee, Frank Clark. Frank passed away last Friday and intended on coming here. Frank was a real pioneer in terms of civil rights for people with disabilities and having access to public transportation. A lot of you might recall the old days when there were a number of folks in wheelchairs who literally blocked Woodward Avenue, and I see Roger McCarville is one of those cantankerous ones that tried to get a little attention, and it did work. Frank also was an advocate for having accessible voting locations in the city of Detroit and suburban areas. A true pioneer of public transportation, a true pioneer of the rights for people with disabilities, and Frank will be sorely missed by us at SMART and throughout southeastern Michigan. But that leads into our next award winner, Mike Harris. Mike is the executive director with the Paralyzed Veterans of America and has held a variety of positions with PVA and done a lot of advocacy from things like making sure that the sports stadiums have proper seating. He sat on a number of state boards. But one of the other things that Mike has done is he has sat on the board of the Lincoln Transit Commission. And as many of you know, we have community partnership programs. In the Wayne, Westland, Garden City, Inkster area, am I right? Have I got them all?
You got it.
Is Lincoln Transit. And Mike has sat on that board for a long time. And one of the other nice things about Mike is whenever he goes to Washington and he meets with our congressional delegation and he meets with the senators, I always get a call. All right, what's the latest on transit? What do I need to tell them? And when it comes time for our millage, you can make sure that every PVA member, Paralyzed Veterans of Michigan, PVA member, knows about the millage and knows about what the right thing to do. Mike, as well as the PVA, have been a longtime friend of SMART, of public transportation. And Mike, I'm pleased to give you the award.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. It's really an honor to be here to accept this award on behalf of Michigan Paralyzed Veterans of America. I do send out my condolences to Frank Clark and his family. Frank was really an advocate that really, when I look back at the transportation movement, especially for the disabled community and our region, I was going through my files yesterday, and all of a sudden, one of the files that popped up was the Simpson lawsuit. And really, I believe that started it. That's where the seed was planted. Even though we lost the case, and I wasn't with PVA then, I think it set the groundwork for us to go forward, to educate communities to the responsibilities, to ensure that passengers with disabilities were allowed to access the bus without barriers. And that meant having ramps that worked, having drivers that knew how to communicate to the disabled passenger to understand what their needs are. And so I believe people like Dan Dirks, Jesse Holmes, and Frank Clark, and others paved the road. And it's because of their efforts we're here enjoying the benefits of the transportation systems that we currently have in place. When the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990, one of the key provisions of that act was transportation. And the people who drafted the legislation realized that in order for the ADA to have the impact for the disabled community, access to transportation would be a vital link in ensuring that we had access to our communities and that we were able to participate equally. But the frustrations that I have, especially living in this region, and when I talk about our other PVA chapters throughout the country and hear the transportation systems that they have in place, it's very discouraging when I have to try and sell ours because they're, even though we have made great strides, we have a lot of work still to do. When I look at SMART, the frustrations that I have and others with disabilities have is that communities have the right to opt out. I've always had an issue with that. I believe communities should not have that right. I think we need a regional transportation system that's seamless where everyone has to join together and make it work as one transportation system. What I try and tell people is almost like building a puzzle, and when you complete the puzzle, you're missing those last 5 pieces. The puzzle just doesn't look right. And it's really what we have in play here with SMART. And I found it interesting that a couple of years ago, a reporter from the news called, Detroit News, because someone was planning on filing a lawsuit against SMART because of the fact that some communities didn't have SMART available. And I tried to explain to the reporter that the issue wasn't with SMART itself, it was the fact that communities had the option to opt out. And I tried to explain to the reporter what happens when there isn't public transportation. And I gave the example of my mother who has MS, dependent on a power wheelchair, who has to, her medical care is provided out in Ann Arbor at U of M, and she's from the Westland. But there's no way to get to her there, using the public transportation system. So she's relying on private transportation. And we had to pay $150 round trip every time she has an appointment. And there's a lot of families that are going through this. So that's why it's critical that we come up with a dedicated funding source to address these issues. And basically, I just want to once again thank SMART. I want to thank Dan Dirks. Probably most of you have heard he plans on retiring the next few months. He's sorely going to be missed. He's been a true advocate, not only the disabled community, but I think the beauty of Dan is that he thinks out of the box. That he's not structured in how he goes about his day-to-day business. And that, so you never know what's going to, when I get a call from Dan, you never know what's going to come out of his mouth. But usually it's something that's going to have a positive impact on the disabled community. And I look at my friends in Kreiner, like Roger McCarville, Tony Philippus, Dan Dirks, and those, and I really accept this award on behalf of them and on behalf of Michigan Paralyzed Veterans of America, who have really paved the road for us to, like I say, for me to be at a place like this today where, 20, 30 years ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to get into the building. So once again, thanks to SMART for recognizing MPVA. And as we go forward, we're still committed to working with SMART to achieve the transportation system that we all dream of. Thank you.
I do want to say one little note about Jesse Holmes. Jesse was one of the presidents of our advisory committee and was president of the Michigan Paralyzed Veterans of America. And I can recall early in the 504 days when Section 504, which required equality of services for people with disabilities. And I know Frank Cunningham, raise your hand, Frank, and back. Frank was one of about 4 or 5 of us that would run these tests. See, and Frank's a good example. Frank has a seeing eye dog, and there was this restaurant over on the east side of Detroit that would not serve people who were blind that had service dogs. They wouldn't serve them at all. And so to us, that was a real challenge. And Frank Clark and Frank Cunningham and me, and I think that we have Jesse. I'm not sure if Jesse was on that one trip. We had real fun. We basically wouldn't leave until they served them. And from that point forward, that restaurant started serving people that had service dogs. And that, there's a lot of trials. There's a lot of things that we've gone through over the last 10, 20, 30 years that we take for granted now. That we appreciate the pioneers like the Jesse Holmes and work with P. Van Rogers and Frank Cunningham. Because without those small victories, we wouldn't have the equal service that we do have. And I'm really proud that SMART is the first transit system in the country to have all ramp buses on their fixed route service. And we went from having 10 to 20 complaints a day from wheelchair users. Do I think we're lucky, Marvin, somewhere around here, we're lucky to get 1 complaint on a ramp a month. And usually when we do, it gets top priority because it just doesn't happen. The next award winners, and I'm going to announce the 2, because when you see one, usually you see the other. And if you didn't know better, you'd think they were brothers. Jack Schramm and Ken Schramm. Jack isn't here with us. He's under the weather a little bit today. Jack, among the things that Jack has done in his life is he worked for DDOT for how many years? 40 years. But one of the other talents that Jack had and still has, and it's been picked up by Ken, is a historian. When you're going through it, when I was in my 5 or 10 year tenure here at SMART, I didn't think much about the past and I didn't think much about what I was doing. But Jack and Ken have had the foresight to document the progress of public transportation. Because one of the things you learn in history is that if you don't look back, you're going to repeat itself. And I got to tell you one little story of where we used a lot of the information from Ken and Jack. Back when SMART was going through the height of their crisis about 10, 15 years ago, one of the things that Mike Duggan challenged us, and he was the general manager at the time, was to design some bus routes that would truly serve suburban areas. So we took some information that Ken and Jackie had on suburban bus routes back in the 40s. And while we didn't mirror it, it's pretty darn close. And Ron and I are telling the story. After that, people said the two best planners in the world were Linda Binford, Ron Lisco, and Dan Dirks. But I have to tell you, it's the history that provided so much of that information for us. And we appreciate all their support. As a matter of fact, at our last board meeting, our board acknowledged Jack Schramm as the SMART's official historian, and they passed a resolution. We're going to, in addition to the awards, we're going to pass that out to you tonight. Thank you.
later formed the basis for his 7 books. First 2 were strictly on the DSR and city operations, followed by 5 more on the suburban and urban operations, which later was followed by 7 additional articles on the suburban bus operations. So I was very fortunate that we were able to save the records. We had a lot of people working for the DSR, later DDOT, kind enough to save and turn over a lot of materials, which unfortunately a lot of people didn't think much of it at the time, and it's sort of been lost in history. I also like to acknowledge one particular individual here in the audience. My dad working at the DSR had a lot of proteges, a lot of people out in the South Factory. One individual was Ernie Knox, who rose from the money handler, working on the money cars, to the top position of the general manager of the DSR. Fortunately, Ernie lost Ernie several years ago. Unfortunately enough, Peggy Knox is here today with us. Peggy's been very kind to turn over a lot of our own personal records and information, and enjoy your career. Dan, I want to thank you and Ron because you've been very instrumental in saving a lot of the suburban bus operations here in the history of SEMTA, SMART, and its predecessor companies such as Great Lakes Transit, March, and Martin Coach. Martin Coach garage is still standing just a few blocks from here. They operated an independent, privately owned bus company operating out of Rutland for many years. But like so many of the suburban bus companies, just came across financial hard times in the late 60s, and it was really with the formation of SEMTA that saved the suburban bus companies and operations, and they're becoming smart. Also, just to let you know, the cats out of the hay, we are working on setting up a transit museum. In fact, in this particular building, where we will have some displays across the highway here. There will be some refreshments. We'll be setting up some permanent display cases where we can have changing exhibits on Detroit transit history, including both the Detroit and the suburban operations, and saving a lot of the archives out for ourselves and others to enjoy. Our main point is saving a lot of the history was recorded, but to share it with everybody. And we've done that with articles, magazine articles, books, and attending items such as this, events such as this, where we can share the history of our public transportation. The DSR of the city was a very proud operator. It was a vast system that employed 7,000 employees at one time, had 3,000 streetcars, 4,000 buses, operated 200 miles of streetcars in and around Detroit. And Detroit was, hopefully will regain its leadership as the transit hub once again. But again, thank you very much for your very kind words, especially on behalf of my father. Really the key player that issues could be here. My interest, I don't know if you know, but my dad never drove because of tunnel vision. Was never able to operate a car safely when I was sick. So for many years, for us to get around before I learned how to get a license, the only way we could get around was by bus. And the old saying was, if the DSR didn't get there, we didn't get there. And it was very true. And I got to know a lot of the people because even though my dad would take the bus a lot of times, the bus schedules didn't work out. So I visited this building and its operations many times over the years. I got to know a lot of the people. And I was the second home for me. And by the way, just here's the curious, this building is still standing at the corner of Shoemaker and St. Jean. However, it is slated for demolition in the very near future for improvements over at Shoemaker Drive. It's been abandoned for a number of years. But in case you're curious, when I take some pictures along Shoemaker, it's still standing at least for a while. But at least we can preserve it as it did in about the 1940s, late 1940s. But again, thank you very much for coming out for your time with us.
One of the jobs I had in college was working for United Parcel Service, and it was a great job. And I worked over on real close to the Shoemaker Terminal. And actually, the building that PS used was the old trolley barn for the old Detroit Urban Railways over there. So that was my first public transit experience, even though I didn't know it. The next award winner is a person that I think has given a lot to this area, Norm White. DDOT is very fortunate to have such a capable person in charge of their operations. One person asked me, or a few people have asked me, what does it take to be a good transit manager? And I think there's a lot of different things you need, but one thing is of critical importance, and that's having compassion and identifying who your customers are and wanting to serve them the best you can. From the day Norm White stepped into the position as Executive Director of DDOT to today, that's been his sole focus. And DDOT has improved tremendously under his leadership, and it will continue to get better while Norm White is there. Norm has been a true friend of SMART. Our relationship in terms of the partnerships that we have been able to create over the last 2-3 years since he has been Executive Director by far surpasses anything that SMART and DDOT have been able to do in the past. And it's really with his sheer will and determination that we've seen that happen. In addition to that, Norm has been a good friend. When you are the general manager or executive director, once in a while you need a shoulder to cry on or someone to walk through certain issues. I've got 2 really good transit friends here in Michigan. Norm White is one of them, and Rochelle Cody, my friend from the Upper Peninsula, is the other. No matter when you call Norm, no matter what the issue is, he's always will give you some friendly advice or just listen. And he's been so helpful to me in his time there. Norm, it is my great pleasure to present you with the Champion of Transit.
Appreciate it, Dan. I appreciate those kind words. I almost try to figure out who you were speaking. Probably you and several other folks feel that way, and I really listened to what Norma had to say. And a lot of unique things and beautiful things she said. One is that we normally, when it comes to speaking in front of people, not really take homage on what we have done. We really kind of focus on other people. I'm the first to tell you I did it all along. It's a lot of great people at DDOT who really bound together, really recognize that a change is needed to begin to push transportation out and make a change for not only just Detroit, but for the region. Obviously, there's some folks here, obviously the Deputy Director, Christine Granger, I don't know if you guys know her, and also Yvette Williams, she's the General Manager of Operations, Donna Rehall is the General Manager of Maintenance, and also Susan Baldwin is also head of our IT area. And our planning person is Tim Rosen. I don't know where Tim is. Where you're hiding out. That's where you should be all the time. The other part is kind of sad to see that Dan is leaving. And he and I had that conversation as well. And Dan is correct. Many times we've had whether from over lunch or just in a phone call where I never made it out of the garage or he never made it out of the house. We kind of had these conversations about some of the frustrations that we experienced throughout our daily lives that no one else could really hear and share, the things that we kept. So Dan, I really appreciate all the tutorship you've given me because you've been a part of transit for a long time. And the advice you've given me helped not only with the relationship we have created, but also with transit throughout the region as well. So I would like to step back and applaud you for all the work that you've done. The second piece is when you guys begin to roast Dan, please and fight. The other part is I accept this award on behalf of DDOT and recognize that I am just a spokesperson for DDOT. There's a lot of hands that's involved with making the place working, changing, and those folks have really been working hard every day to make that happen. Secondly, I like to accept this award on behalf of the relationship that SMART and DDOT has built over the last 3 years. I think that's been one of the things that since I've been with DDOT for 10 years, but before that time, I believe the region, particularly what we read in the newspapers and all those things, we began at some point, they expressed the competitive nature associated with 2 different departments as a way to uplift one and determine the purpose of another. what we began to do is to recognize that we have to change how we're viewed into the public arena, meaning the view that we're in this together. In order to make this thing work, we're in it together, that we have to begin to bound, market, and create relationships to provide service for the citizens. The focus changed from the business itself to the citizens. And that really began to manifest itself in all the changes that we made in the relationship we have built. The third part would be, where do we go from here? Now that we change how the region view transportation as a provider instead of a competitive nature, we've successfully, and that we'll continue that process. But where do we go from here? How do we begin to help people understand that transportation can play an economic development instrument for the entire region? It can now begin to play a role not just in providing service for the seniors, disabled students, and people who are forced to take transportation every day, to other folks who really need it. It's the greatest tax relief ever. $50 for a monthly pass. What does that get you? Maybe a week and a half worth of gas, depending on where you live. We have to now begin to help our region understand what this transportation need means to this region. How do we move it forward? Let's be courageous in stepping forward and understanding that now is the time. It's never a time when money is plentiful, because changes are not focused on them because things are all right. But now we're in a situation where economic conditions in the state of Michigan is that it has its challenges. We can play a role in changing that. And we have to begin to understand what role we have to play and believe in it, and then make our step forward. I, as a leader of DDOT, will always be a champion of transportation, as well as Dan Smart will always be a champion of transportation. We can collectively join ourselves together and really move transportation forward in a time, in a place, and at a moment when no one recognizes how far we can push this thing. We can begin to clear up the inefficiencies of transportation, begin to have this conversation of how far we can go. We need to have it soon. The time is passing. So, first of all, I personally accept this award. I enjoy it. Again, I also enjoy the conversation that I have. Even when we first took over, I was probably 50 pounds lighter, and I had hair. And I looked at Dan, I said,
I was 100 pounds lighter than I said.
So my wife made me get on the eating program. I tried to read, I lost some pounds. But the other part of me is I enjoy the conversation that we have. It allows me to release stress, and I love to continue it. The relation not just with you and I, but our executive staff, all the way down to our managerial staffs, have really worked together, really to bring some bright things to our region, and I look forward to those things happening again. And just for DDOT, I thank you guys for inviting us and presenting us with this. Thanks a lot.
When Norm and I started our discussions among the two of us, and we encouraged our staff to, we used to get phone calls from our different staff saying, well, I talked with somebody from SMART. But it got to the point where we were getting calls 4 or 5 times a day on a frequent basis, that now we know the conversations are going on. We know the work is happening. And the good thing is we're not part of the process. That's how far it's come. The next winner of our Champions of Transit Award is somebody that's been an advocate only recently for us in the last year. Well, directly, probably indirectly, they've been good friends with ours before. It's Penny Williams from Transit Windsor. We at SMART and DDOT for years would see the Transit Windsor buses come over. They'd go to the Tiger ball games in Red Wing. And we would always admire what a good, well-run operation it was. And about 2.5, 3 years ago, when the Super Bowl was announced that was coming to Detroit, one of the best things about the Super Bowl committee, in our opinion, was that they brought all the transit providers together, SMART, DDOT, Transit Windsor. And from those initial meetings, we were able to put together a universal pass for the week of the Super Bowl, which worked out terrific. But we talked with Penny and her staff, and the folks at DDOT and the folks at SMART, about trying to create something more permanent. And that is an international transfer. And that would allow someone using SMART or DDOT service to use Transit Windsor, to go to the casino, or to go to dinner. And it would allow folks from Windsor to come to Wayne State University, to do some shopping, and to create a real universal system so that our folks could begin to work closer together. What we also wound up doing in that process was we met with each other's staffs. Our maintenance folks got together, all three of them. Our transportation folks got together. One of the things I really admire about Transit Windsor, we get some federal funding and we get some state funding. They get just a little bit of federal funding and just a little bit of provincial funding. Most, if not 80–90%, Penny, at least, of their operation is funded by the city of Windsor, and that's just phenomenal. This award is presented to Penny Williams for not only for the work that we did during the Super Bowl, for not only for the work that we've done with our transfer, but helping us create truly a cooperative arrangement between SMART and DDOT and Transit Windsor. And Norm, will you help me present this award?
Thank you very much, Dan, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity, excuse me, to help you celebrate National Transportation Week and the Champions of Transit. I'm truly honored to be here, and as Norm said, you know, you don't do it by yourself, but I feel like I'm accepting an award on behalf of both DDOT and SMART and Transit Windsor because it's really the collaborative partnership that we've had that's been able to bring me here. Certainly, we have been operating in Detroit since 1988, and we are really proud of what we've been going through the last little while. That's been some of the brainchilds, I think, of most of the administration that came out. It started during Super Bowl. It started with both our mayors, Mayor Kilpatrick and Mayor Francis, saying, we're a two-nation destination, and let's prove it. Let's work together. Let's have seamless transportation between Detroit and between Windsor. So as Dan had briefly said, is that you now can get on a bus in Windsor and transfer to a bus in Detroit. And I think that's pretty spectacular. We have the same challenges in Windsor as you do in Detroit. Sustainable funding, as Dan said, it's really difficult in the Canadian operations. The users of our system pay 60% of our operating costs, and the city picks up the rest of the 40%. So all of our fares, basically 60% of all of our operating costs are funded by the users of the system, which results in a higher fare system. But we are working towards lobbying with the federal and provincial governments to have some more funding to help operate our system. But you know, it's areas like this and areas where we can share knowledge, even if it is Canada and the United States, that we can share the knowledge and we can share our operating procedures, and which is what we're doing right now. We have been working with our planning department. We're going to be working in the maintenance area, and that's something that you need to grasp and you need to really take hold of and embrace it, because I think it's something we can always learn best practices from. So I really, on behalf of my staff at Transit Windsor and on behalf of the staff at DDOT and SMART that really came together to do this initiative, I thank you very much. And just one thing, I'm going to get killed, but I want to wish Pat a happy birthday. He's 50 today. And that was really instrumental in getting us. I probably won't make it home. But, you know, I just had to do that. Thanks, Pat.
Pat, don't blame Penny. I was going to do it if she wasn't.
Forgot I got the car keys.
I can take a bus.
There you go.
Hey, there you go.
The last of our champions of transit is somebody that who has probably done as much for SMART as anyone in this room or in metropolitan Detroit, Dick Blouse. You know, back in the early 90s, SMART was mired in debt. Most of our service was not taking people to where they needed to go. And Mike Duggan, and Ed McNamara, and Brooks Patterson, and Mark Steenberg, and a few others had this idea of putting together a local tax, redesigning Smart Service, and creating a community-based service. But they could not have done it without the political support of the Detroit Chamber of Commerce. And Dick Blouse took a chance on Smart. So there are a few people that I always say, whenever you see a Smart bus going, there's a few people you need to thank every time you see them. Dick Blouse is one of them. There is no doubt, without Dick Blouse's support for our millage and our operation and the coordination efforts and everything that he's done, Smart wouldn't be around today, and transportation in the suburbs would not be here. We at Smart, Dick, are very appreciative for everything that you've done for us, not only now, but your current efforts, and we know not only what you will do in the future, but the Chamber. You are a true friend of Smart. Thank you.
Well, the first thing I'd like to do is ask Claudia Berry to come up here and stand beside me, because truly, Claudia, our senior director, Claudia has really, we affectionately call her a bus driver, because she has driven our transit efforts since the very beginning of time. She's really our historian. If you want to know anything about this, she can pull it out of the files while none of us can find it. And truly deserves much of this credit. As Dan said, the Chamber has been involved with transit for quite some time. Back in 1967, by a board resolution, we said we needed a regional transit system in southeast Michigan. So you can tell the Chamber doesn't exactly work very fast. But we do persevere. And it was in 1995, I was in town, couldn't have been a month, and Ed McNamara and Mike Duggan were on my doorstep. He said, you need to save the SMART system. I gotta tell you, I didn't even know what the SMART system was. It became very clear that the Chamber needed to step in. And we said we would do that if you all will continue to work to build a regional transit system. Because that's truly what we have always felt that we need. And of course, the rest is history. SMART has done a very effective job over the years. And really, I want to recognize SMART for bringing us National Transportation Week. But I particularly also want to join in affirming our appreciation of Dan Duritz. Without his leadership, without his vision, without his way of bringing the people that work for SMART together into a big family, I don't think that SMART would be what it is today. So Dan, great job. We continue to stand for regional transit, as Mr. Harris said, with no opt-out. We absolutely believe you can't build a regional transit system when you allow communities to opt out that system. We believe that we need not just a transit needing system, but we need a transit choice system. Let me give you an example. I was saying this before the program. On Thursday, my wife and I are celebrating our anniversary, our 40th anniversary in Rome, Italy, with my best buddy in life, who's also celebrating his 40th anniversary. We will get a driver, actually, because we're going too many days, to take us to the airport. The choice is pay $170 to put your car in the parking lot there, or $180 for a driver to get you there and back. While my buddy in Atlanta, his wife will take, they live in the Buckhead area, she'll take a light rail system down to his office with Bell South, meet him there, and then he'll have his luggage there. They'll get back on another light rail system and go out to the airport and walk off and take their flight. and his car will sit in the office parking garage free of charge for those 10 days. Now, that's not transit choice, in my opinion. My choice is a garage or pay a driver to take me there. We need a regional transit system. As we go around this world, as we look at other great regions, Schiphol Airport and Airport City there, and Frankfurt, and see what they're doing in Beijing and Korea, if we are going to be a great city and we are going to compete, we absolutely have to do this, and we have to do it now. We have to create a system that gets everybody where they want to go, when they want to go there. And the Chamber is going to continue to be there. We are going to continue to fight for that, and we will continue to be the friend of smart and VDOT. And with that, as I close, I do want to affirm also another thing that Dan said. We really do appreciate the fact that Norm and Dan and Smart and VDOT are, for the first time, I think, in our work on this, are really working in a collegial way, trying their best with the systems that they have to build a system that we can be proud of. So great job, guys, and we will continue to work with both VDOT and Smart to get us to this new world we need to get to. Thank you.
Before I turn back over to Ron, well, hold on. I do want to acknowledge all the Smart and VDOT staff members that are here. Would you please stand up and just wave your hands?
There is one final award that we'd like to give, and that is to Dan Dirks, our church champion president. Our board chairman couldn't be here, so I'm pinch hitting on this one. And Dan is such a baseball fan. I want to tell you this corny baseball joke, so you can swear. But
Smart.
there are certain records. Baseball is big for record books, and I think there are certain records that will stand forever with Dan Dirks. He truly is kind of our Babe Ruth at Smart. Dan started with the organization as an intern some 30 years ago and rose up through the ranks to be the general manager. He's also the general manager for 10 years, which is another record. Usually that's a revolving door. It's a tough job. It's a little bit of a test. That record won't be broken. Things that were mentioned earlier about making the fleet 100% accessible. Starting the Community Partnership Program, which is a model for the nation. Insisting on bikes on board that the rest of the staff didn't want to have. It's been enormously successful. Time and time again, there are things where Dan's vision and foresight and leadership has helped shape transit as it exists today. And he lives and breathes this job. We really are thankful that he's going to find a little break and be able to have some fun. Truly, it's just been marvelous working for him. He's not only a boss but a friend. I think the entire staff loves the way that he has shaped the organization, having us all work as a team. And if you go in the past also, different ranker and things that were going on, you talk about how things are collegial now between VDOT and Smart. Internal within Smart, the same thing happens with all the departments. I think we're really a kind of a well-running machine now, and a lot of that's attested to Dan's determination. And basically no-nonsense approach, getting down to not personalities, but what we need to do to make transit work in Detroit, and that's been his life work, and he's done it extremely well. So with that, I'd like to honor Dan Dirks as our champion of transit.
Two little stories. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate this. But two little stories. When I go to a transit conference, and I think a lot of you know I'm on the board of the Community Transportation Association of America, and we have 2 board meetings that are usually on a weekend. And then we have our national get-together, which starts Friday night, which I'm going for a week. And when I come back, I usually have a list of about 30 different things that we have to do. Part of the community partnership program is a part of that. We now are providing free maintenance to the local communities. That came from an idea I got there. I think the reason I'm glad I'm retiring, quite honestly, is that I'm only coming back to these lists. And then the other person I just want to acknowledge is the person who's not here who really got me into this, and that's Mike Duggan. I have never worked with a person that is, has the political skills, intelligence, and wherewithal to get things done. I learned so much from him that I tried to really take the mission that Mike started and pass it on. And I still remember the first meeting I had with Brooks Patterson after I got this job, and that's my last piece of advice. He pulled me aside. He said, if you can do one thing, get the best possible people you can to work for you and turn them loose. And that's really what I've done. We have very good employees here at SMART. They do their job well. They're passionate. They care about the people they serve. And that's why we've had the success that we've had. And I appreciate them, and I'll appreciate them my whole life. With that,
That's all, folks.
That's all. Richard. Richard just gave me an envelope. I was taking pictures of the break.
Let's have a rebellion against them.
Ken Schramm, Lincoln. Here we go. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
well, what I told Dale is, listen, even if we
As soon
don't
as I get down, I get reflections, so I'm
next
going
year,
to take it
should
up
be
above.
standing. That's what I think. Yeah, it doesn't need to be much more complex than that. And it works. It's not that difficult to do. It'll take a lot of organizing, probably a year to get it going. Somebody will get, it's our middle belt between Diane's hole, between 6 and 7 miles.